Who is the best MMA fighter from every country? We're going to be going around all the relevant countries, so we're not going to be doing like irrelevant countries that only have like one or two MMA fighters, and we're going to do the main countries. Another thing I want to clarify is I'm doing the best, not the greatest. So, for example, for Brazil, I'm not going to pick Anderson Silva. I'm going to pick someone that's currently fighting in MMA. They have to be active. They have to be on the active roster. They can't be someone who fought 10, 15 years ago. Starting off, let's get it out of the way. USA's John Jones. I mean, he's not the greatest American of all time, he's the greatest of all time, but he happens to be American, so we've got to give it to him. Yeah, pretty self-explanatory, the best of all time. I've already done a video on why I think he's the best of all time, but he is. He happens to be from America, New York, I believe, so yeah. John Jones is the best American in the world. America's a good country for mixed martial arts. It's a majority of fighters in MMA in the UFC happen to be American. I mean, it is a lot more diverse now. Back like 10, 15 years ago, I'd say like a good 80% of the roster was like American and Brazilian, whereas now it's way more diverse than it was. But yeah, America has so many good fighters on their roster, but John Jones, as long as he's American, he will be number one. Then we move on. United Kingdom, Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards, the most aesthetic man on the planet, is the best British fighter, and I know United Kingdom is not just one country, but I'm not gonna do individual ones like Scotland and Wales. I'm just gonna put England, Scotland, and Wales into one, and Leon Edwards is the best. Number two would probably be, I don't even know who would number two be. Maybe Arnold Allen, Tom Aspinall, but one's got a belt. Leon Edwards defended it once on like a 11, 12 fight win streak now. That's 9 fights in a row, bruv. Best British fighter currently, best UK fighter currently in the UFC. Yeah, I mean, who else is there? Like I said, Tom Aspinall hasn't touched the belt yet. Arnold Allen hasn't touched the belt yet. Makayev's ranked number 11. It's got to be Leon Edwards, the most aesthetic god on the planet. Yeah, British MMA or UK MMA has made like a huge rise in these past couple of years. You know, we've got some trash talkers like Molly McCann and Paddy Pimblett. We got some people like Tom Aspinall, Arnold Allen, Nathaniel Wood, Mohamed Makayev. But Leon Edwards been around a pretty long time, and he deserves to be number one in the UK. He is the best British fighter, which is crazy because a couple of years ago, I think it was 2019, this guy was hated by the Brits because of that beef he had with Darren Till. Everyone thought Darren Till were going to be champ, and now he's not even in the UFC. So Leon Edwards, best British fighter or UK fighter. Then we're moving on to Brazil. Now this one's got a lot of good contenders in Brazil. There's so many fighters, but it's got to be the champion, Alexandre Pantoja. I mean, who else are we putting? Alex Pereira, who's just got knocked out and isn't really that good at MMA, let's be honest. He's just a really good kickboxer with some good knees. Pantoja's he's great. He's beaten Brandon Moreno 3 times. He's so underrated. He's the champ. He just won at UFC 290. He's so underrated as well, man. Alexandre Pantoja's so underrated. Like, no one ever talks about him. He's not really a well-known guy. Not much casual people really knew him before the Moreno fight, the third one. Hopefully now we can go in a running flyweight and prove that he is the best Brazilian currently. Like I said, Aldo's retired. Pereira's not that great. I mean, yeah, he's the champion. No other Brazilian current champion, so I've got to give it to Pantoja. I've got to give it to him. Yeah, really good submissions. Got that dog in him. Can strike well. On a bit of a winning streak right now. Yeah, Brazil's best is Alexandre Pantoja. Like I said, this isn't of all time, because if it was of all time, it would be Silva, but Alexandre Pantoja, Brazil. Brazil's also a very, very good country for MMA. I'd actually put Brazil like number 3 in the world for MMA. I'd put Russia number 1, or USA number 1, Russia number 2, and 3 number Brazil. Brazil's very competitive. They've been around for so long as well. You know, they had OGs like Vitor Belfort and Silva. Brazil's very good, but for right now, currently in this time in MMA, Pantoja is the best Brazilian. Then we move on to Mexico. Someone else who fought at UFC tonight, Yair Rodriguez. This was either going to be between Brandon Moreno and Rodriguez, and part of me wants to put Moreno because he's been champ, right? Yair Rodriguez hasn't been champ. Well, first of all, Moreno can't really seem to keep the belt. He lost it off Figueiredo a couple times. He lost it to Pantoja. Probably not going to get an immediate title shot. Whereas Yair Rodriguez, the only real person he's lost to in recent times is Holloway and Volkanovski. In my opinion, the second most competitive, or the third most competitive division in the UFC. I think he's a better fighter than Moreno. I think he's more well-rounded. I think if there was an equivalent to Holloway and an equivalent to Volkanovski at flyweight, Moreno probably wouldn't beat him. It's very close to being Moreno, but I still think Yair Rodriguez is the better Mexican as of right now. Those two are the ones dominating the Mexican scene. They made MMA huge in Mexico, this UFC 290, I can't speak. It is Yair Rodriguez though. Very good on his feet. Very good BJJ. Got absolutely battered by Volk, but that's nothing to be ashamed of because Volk is the best. Volk is amazing, but Yair Rodriguez, in my opinion, is the best Mexican. I'm sure he will. He could win the belt one day when Volkanovski moves up to lightweight or retires, and Holloway's next on the throne. I could 100% see Yair Rodriguez being the featherweight champion one day. But Mexico MMA, huge, probably the biggest it's ever been, to be honest with you. Moreno and Yair Rodriguez carrying it right now. We need some more Mexican contenders, but yeah, Yair Rodriguez, best Mexican. Then we move on to Spain. I'm going to go with Ilia Topuria. There's not too much Spanish fighters in the UFC, but I'm going to go with Ilia Topuria. Another featherweight. He's probably going to be fighting Volk next. He's undefeated. He's never lost a fight. He just beat Josh Emmett. Then before that, he beat Bryce Mitchell. Then before that, he finished Jai Herbert. He also finished Bryce Mitchell. He's going to be fighting for the belt next. And I honestly think he could give Volk a tough fight. I do think Volk would win, but he would give Volk a tough fight, yeah. Undefeated. What is he, like 13, 14, 15 and 0 now? Something like that. Very, very good in the pocket. Very good hands. Powerful. Great wrestling. Good submission defense. Ilia Topuria is the best Spanish. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, Topuria is not Spanish. He's, where is it, Georgian or whatever it is. Well, he holds up like 5 different flags at once. Google says he's from Spain. He's represented Spain in previous fights. I'm going to put him as the best Spanish right now. I think we need a couple more Spanish MMA fighters to make Spain a really big, but this guy's carrying it, man. Ilia Topuria. He actually could be champion one day. I believe he will. I'm not saying this. I believe he will be champion one day. He's pretty young as well. I heard he's only like 27 years old. How old is he? He's in his young 20s or mid 20s or something like that. And Volkanovski's not staying around for another decade. This guy will 100% be champion one day, which will be huge for Spanish MMA. But yeah, Ilia Topuria, in my opinion, is the best Spanish. 26. This guy's 26 years old and he's already going to be fighting for the belt soon. That's mad. But yeah, Topuria, best Spanish. Then we move on. Now, I said Ilia Topuria isn't going to be Georgian because someone's taking that spot and he goes by the name of Merab. I just had to include it because there's a couple of fighters that rep Georgia and Merab's the best of them. Pretty simple. Georgia's not really a big country, but Merab is the one representing Georgia. Number 1 contender. I actually believe he's the best bantamweight in the world right now. I think he beats Sterling, but he's never going to fight him. Technically champion is Merab. Champion material. Battered Peter Yan more than anyone has done before. Probably he would 100% beat O'Malley as well. Think he'd beat Sterling as well. Who else is there to compete with the Georgia spot? Like I said, there's Ilia Topuria, but I'd put him more in the Spain category. Yeah, he's kind of the only big Georgian right now, but I mean, there's only like 2 million people in Georgia, and he's one of them, and he's managed to become this high in the MMA, so I've got to give it to him, man. I've got to give it to him, but he's the best Georgian. Shout out to any Georgians watching. Don't think there will be. They'll all be on cliffs, but yeah, Merab Dvalishvili, best Georgian. Let's go. Then we move on to another country that's really developing in martial arts these past couple of years, especially this year, Australia. There's a couple of Australian fighters. There's Jack Della Maddalena. There's that guy, what's his name? I forgot his name. The guy who had that war with Michael Johnson. Forgot his name though, with no eyebrows. But in my opinion, the best Australian has to go to Alexander Volkanovski. I mean, he's not only the best Australian, I'd say he's the as of right now in his career, he's like the 6th best of all time in the history of MMA. I mean, he's got like 6 title defenses, only lost twice. One of them was arguably a robbery. I think he's going to be lightweight champion one day. I believe he'll be double champ. Very, very well-rounded. Volkanovski is insane. Like I said, pretty similar to Jones. Not only is he just one of the best Australians of all time. Well, I mean, he is the best Australian of all time. He's the best of all. He's the featherweight best of all time as well. I'd say he's number 6 in all time. Volkanovski, best Australian, but Australia is rising so fast as an MMA. Like I said, we got Jack Dale Madlena who fought last night, and I think he won, but it was an underwhelming win, which wasn't good. But with the UFC 284, Makhachev, Volkanovski, and then we had Volkanovski taking on Rodriguez, and we had that event in Perth, Australia. Australian MMA is at an all-time high right now. It's at its peak, in my opinion. And their best is definitely Alexander Volkanovski, and he probably will be until he retires. But Volkanovski is the king of the Aussies. And then we move on to a very, very, very competitive country right now. I'd say this is the second best MMA country in the entire world, as in most fighters come from this country. Now, it is a huge country, so there's no surprise, but it's Russia. The best Russian is Islam Makhachev. He's the only Russian champion in the UFC right now, I believe. Yeah, I think he is. And he's just he's basically Khabib 2.0, but with better striking. Really good, well, I'd say he's a decent striker, fantastic wrestling, some of the best in the UFC right now. Beat Volkanovski. I actually think he beat Volkanovski as well. People say Volk won, but I actually think Islam beat Volkanovski, which I know it wasn't at Volk's natural weight class, but that's not easy to do. His lightweight resume isn't that good. Previous to Volkanovski, the only people he'd beaten is Bobby Green, Dan Hooker, and he did get a win over Oliveira pretty fast, and Oliveira's cleared it for him, so you got to give him it. But yeah, there's a lot of Russian fighters right now. There's Ankalaev. I can't think of any other Russian fighters. My brain's not braining, but the best of the Russians has to go to Islam Makhachev. Yeah, Islam is the best Russian. But like I said, Russian, in my opinion, is the second best country for MMA. There's so many killers that come from Russia, man. When you find out you're fighting, there's Peter Yan as well, but he's on a losing streak. But when you find out you're fighting a fighter from Russia, it's a long day, man. But when you find out it's Islam Makhachev, there's no chance. Islam is the best Russian in UFC right now. Yeah, Islam dominates Russia. Previous, if I had to put a number 2 spot, it'd probably Ankalaev, because he's probably about to fight for a belt. But yeah, Russia's best is Islam Makhachev. Moving on to a country now. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised about this. It's not Conor McGregor, it's Ian Gary. Reason is, what has Conor McGregor done in these past 5 years? Now, we're talking about the best right now, not the best of all time. If we're talking the best right now, how can it be what's his name, Conor McGregor? He gets embarrassed by Khabib, then he gets a win over Donald Cerrone, an old-age Donald Cerrone who hasn't won since that fight, and is now out the UFC. Then he goes on a 2-fight losing streak against Dustin Poirier. One he got knocked out, the other he broke his leg, but he was losing that fight anyway. And then now he's meant to be fighting Chandler, and his career's in a bit of a weird stage right now. Ian Gary, in my opinion, as of right now, is the best Irish fighter in the UFC. Like I said, Irish MMA, I did expect it to be bigger, man. To say that Conor McGregor is one of the biggest celebrities in media history, and definitely in MMA history, I would expect there to be a lot more Irish fighters. But Ian Gary, he's 12-0. He's on a TKO win over Daniel Rodriguez. Probably going to fight another ranked opponent soon. I genuinely believe he has champion material one day. Very, very good. He's the best Irish fighter right now. If you're a casual, you're banging your desk, you're saying, what about McGregor? McGregor's not it, man. McGregor's not it right now. If we're talking the best Irish of all time, then yeah, obviously I'll happily put McGregor. But as of right now, it's not. But hopefully, yeah, Ian Gary's going to be a champion one day. I believe he'll be the second Irish champion. But like I said, I thought there'd be way more Irish fighters considering how big McGregor was. But Ian Gary takes his spot. Number 1, McGregor needs a couple of wins to get back in there, but as of right now, it's 100% Ian Gary. Then we move on. New Zealand. Now, Australia and New Zealand are different countries, so I had to include it, and the best New Zealand is Robert Whittaker. He's the 3rd best middleweight in the world. Previous to the Duplessis fight, he was the 2nd. Some people even thought he was the 1st. He's got a lot of notable wins. He's beat Yoel Romero twice. He's beaten Marvin Vettori, arguably beat Adesanya the 3rd time. He's beaten Darren Till, beaten Derek Brunson, Jared Cannonier. He's been around for so long. He's cleared out the middleweight division. Obviously, after Saturday night, you have to knock him off a little bit. But what other people from New Zealand are better than Whittaker? Taito Iwaza, who's on a 3-fight losing streak and has never even fought for the belt. Like, it's got to be Whittaker. He is the best from New Zealand. He's still a top middleweight in my opinion. I think he's the third best middleweight in the world after Duplessis. Like, he's still very good, very well rounded, fantastic striker, good wrestling. He's definitely Robert Whittaker. 100% Robert Whittaker. A lot of people are saying Adesanya. Adesanya's not from New Zealand. Yeah, Robert Whittaker's the best, man. He's still very good. I believe he will. People are saying Strickland versus Whittaker. I think that's what should be made next, but I think Whittaker wins that. Still one of the best fighters in the world. Still pretty young for MMA. Still got a lot of time left. But he is still the best from New Zealand, even though he lost. Then we move on to the guy that beat Robert Whittaker. Dricus du Plessis, the best from South Africa. I mean, there's only, his words, 2 South Africans in the UFC. This whole African controversy is building up between him and the Izzy fight, which I believe will only be in like 3 pay-per-views time at UFC 293. But yeah, Dricus du Plessis is the best African. Adesanya's not from Africa. Adesanya picks and chooses where he's from. Dricus du Plessis has always been African. He lives in Africa, breathes in Africa, trains in Africa, and he will bring the belt back to Africa, I believe. The best African is Dricus du Plessis. I believe his record's 20-2. 18 of those go by way of finish, which is just insane. He is one of the best middleweights in the UFC and in the world. I actually think he'll beat Adesanya. But yeah, it's not even close. This guy could go on like a 5-fight losing streak and he'd still be the best from South Africa, because who else is there? Cameron? There's like 3 South Africans, 4 South Africans in the UFC. But Dricus du Plessis is going to fight for a belt. He's had more fame than he's ever had in his life. I used to not like him, but I'm showing him some respect now. Best African in the UFC. And moving on to China. It is Israel Adesanya, the Chinese queen, the Chinese champion. Best, you got to give him credit, man. What has he got? Like 6 defences in total at middleweight. 6 defences. Challenged for the light heavyweight belt, didn't make it. I'd say he's the number 2 middleweight greatest of all time. But he's the Chinese champion. As you can see in the picture, he reps China, so he's Chinese. Yeah, he's really good. Really good. Beat Whittaker twice. Beat No, he didn't. Yeah, he did beat Brunson. Beat Vittori. Beat Costa. Beat Cannonier. This guy's crazy. This guy's crazy at middleweight. People, I don't think he beats du Plessis, but who else is there? I mean, there's Weili Zhang to compete with her, but she's strawweight. I'm trying to do men's here. There's Li Jingliang, Hamzat's son. There's not much. I mean, Chinese MMA is rising, but the best Chinese fighter is Adesanya, and that's all my country's done. Like I said, if you want me to include more countries, or if you want me to do a part 2 of this with like the second best sometimes in the future, we could do that. Do you agree? Yes or no?